Hello. Just making this quick video about the UHC module that I installed for Winter's subscriber UHC. Excuse me. This is going to be a rather casual video, and it's going to contain a lot of technical details. So if that's not your style, feel free to go ahead and find another video to occupy your time. Cool. So let's start with the So this is basically divided into two sections. So this side is the lobby and game initialization, and this side is the game loop, or what happens while the game is running. So let's start over here. This chain of command blocks initializes everything. So it sets the weather cycle and daylight cycle to off, so the weather doesn't happen and the the day doesn't move. It sets the time to 0. Clears the weather. I mean, you can read these, so I'll just go along here. It tells everyone that the module has been enabled. It also turns on the loop of command blocks down here, which is these commands get run while the lobby is active. So right now the lobby is active because I've run the initialization commands. I did something fancy that you really don't have to do. I generated the lobby platform because the lobby platform is cleared out when the game starts, so that nobody has a chance to be spawned on top of it. This just teleports everyone onto the platform in case they're online and not on the platform, you know. These are just fancy things. I cloned this sign onto the tree because there wasn't enough space. I could have given myself more space, but you know. Yeah, there's just some technical details here. So the lobby itself has a few things. So it sets everyone who is just joining. So if you've joined, you have the joined tag. So if I can't spell. If I list all the tags I have joined and C timer mark. I'll get into what the second one is, but the first one just marks me as having joined. So while this is looping, every loop, it'll do something to people who don't have that join tag and then give people the join tag. And what I did specifically was display a welcome title, welcome subtitle. So a thing I wish they would change about the health scoreboard is it won't display those hearts up there unless I take damage after it's been created. So if I do scoreboard objectives, add health to, health, and then I set the display of the tab menu to be health 2. You'll see it doesn't actually show anything until I take some damage, so that's just something I wish they would fix, but, you know, it's not super important to all this stuff. I digress. Let's also get rid of the objective before I forget. What is it? Health 2. Okay, anyways. So, in order for that to happen, I just give poison 1 for 2 seconds. And that damages them. They'll regen it anyways, so that'll end up showing up. It gives regen, and a funny thing, you can disable players outputting damage by giving them weakness 255. Like, it won't even give them a damage tick. They'll just straight up do no damage. This just gives any player without the join tag, so they don't keep having these applied to them. And yeah, the rest of this is, this command block shows you this waiting for players thing down here. And this is just stuff so that if people get hungry, they get saturation. The reason I don't give saturation every game tick is because last UHC I gave people saturation every game tick, and it turns out when you spawn in, you're going to have a lot of leftover saturation. So that's so if I were to go into game mode 0 here, oh wait, I need to disable my auto creative mode. What a cheater. Okay, so you can see my health bar down here. I guess I can do this. There's actually a hidden health bar called saturation. You can read up on the details, but essentially saturation's an extra health bar, sort of a buffer that is eaten up before your actual health bar gets eaten up. Okay, so let's go back into creative here, and this just I have a scoreboard objective that's checking, or that's tracking sprinting. I'll explain later. During the lobby, though, it's not useful, so I have that to set people who have a sprint score back to 0. Okay, so let's go into the interesting stuff, the game start. So if I go score, or actually I think I can just flip this lever. Yep, there we go. So on the right hand side, you can see there's a whole bunch of fake players that are being tracked. So this is just to remove the block above, so it's only initialized once and only once, unless you place another button. This sets the CD countdown, seconds, timer 10. You can sort of read into that what you will. That is just the number of seconds before the game starts. This will just start the countdown clock. So it'll place a block right here, and it'll cause the countdown to start. And this will just convert the countdown ticks, which ticks up every tick. So Minecraft runs at a tick rate of 20. So every 20 ticks, a second is, or 20 ticks make up a second. So this, when it's activated, will add a tick to countdown ticks, and then when it reaches 20, it'll trigger off this chain over here, which will remove a second from countdown seconds, which isn't showing up on the timer right now, and then it'll set ticks to 0 so it can start over. And this is just fancy stuff that it had happen. So this checks if the countdown's at 10 seconds and at 0 ticks, otherwise this will fire 20 times in the 10th second, if you will. This 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here's the start game. It'll do the same check, and then what it'll do is it'll set that block over there to 0, disabling this clock. I'm not sure exactly where this goes. I think it goes over there to start the game initialization commands. It'll set the countdown ticks to -1. Reason it's not 0 is because that clock will run one more time after I remove this redstone block, so it'll count that back up to 0 just to make things nice. And it'll reset the countdown seconds. So if I could make this like 15 seconds and fire this off. Let's also let's disable the game start here really quick. I'm pretty sure that'll disable the game start. Anyways, so if I give myself a stone button, you'll see all that in action. Oh, there we go. See, I had it start at 10, so that would pop up at 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and there you go. Countdown ticks disappears, and oh, I guess the server stopped lagging or something. I don't know. It's not important because this actually just sets the ticks to 0 when it starts, so not a big deal. All right, let's re-enable that. So when the game starts, it's going to run this line of commands right here. This will just make sure it fires once and only once, even though this is an impulse command block, so that's not important. This is just cleanup, I guess. It will clear all effects from the players, so they no longer have regen and weakness and what have you. This will give them resistance. I don't know why it's 0. This should be 5 or 4, I guess. It's not important. Yeah, that should be 5. I don't know what's up with that. Anyways, I guess nobody got hurt while they were being transported. So this is just supposed to prevent damage from being taken before the game starts. This will, slowness, what have you. So, okay, actually, no, this is important. So, slowness 255 and jump boost 250, or jump boost 250 will prevent you from jumping. So let's just, let's demonstrate that. Jump boost, and we'll give it to myself for 10 seconds. 250, excuse me. And now you hear that I'm trying to jump with all my might. I'm actually not going anywhere. You can look over here. Let me reapply it to myself. You can look over here, and my Y coordinate doesn't go up at all, actually. I'm not jumping. This is actually a really good trick for map makers to prevent jumping. Might be common knowledge, I don't know. Anyways, let's continue on here. So, yeah, prevents jumping. Good stuff. It'll reapply the weakness, so that, excuse me, so that people can't damage mobs around them. This will delete the spawn platform so that nobody can spawn up in the air, because that's not fun. You can't really get down. It's not ideal. So then we prevent people from being able to break any blocks until the game starts, including grass, although it's not really important. I guess you could get a seed, but it's not super important. This will just turn off this line of command blocks over here. Oh, and if you're interested, the auto is basically this tag right here, whether or not it needs redstone input. This will spread the players. I'm sure you've all seen spread players commands before, but there you go. And of note, game mode changes and scoreboard changes are registered within the tick they're activated. So I don't, if that made no sense to you, it's okay. Spread players, you know, spreads players. Okay, so I want to talk about a small quirk that I came across while working on this. So if I give myself slowness, a 255, and I give myself jump boost, or like before. Oh, also of note, if you're a map maker, 9999 and 1,000,000 will both, you know, cause this never-ending effect, but certain effects like saturation and yeah, like instantaneous effects won't work with 9999, but they sometimes will work with 1,000,000. Saturation's the big one. You don't want your players to lose hunger, but you still want them to be able to fight mobs. Anyways, now you'll notice it doesn't matter if I'm game mode 1 or game mode 0. I can't. I'm mashing my W key right now. I'm holding it down. You'll see that my coordinates don't even change. Like I can even try and sprint. You can see the sprint particles. I don't go anywhere. I can try jump. I can try and hold W and jump. I don't go anywhere. But a weird quirk with this is that if I hold shift, if I hold, or shift is my sprint key, I guess for most people it's their crouch key. I rebound those. And I tap jump, I can actually go places for some reason. I don't know why this is a thing. I'd imagine that jumping gives you a slight boost forward, regardless of whether or not you're slowed, which might explain why sprint jumping is slightly faster. So yeah, you can actually notice that I can scoot around pretty quickly. All you have to do is really like mash the space button. Yeah. It's interesting. Or this, in case you think I'm flying for some reason, I'll go into game mode 0 and I'll perform the same trick here. I'm not flying. It's not an artifact of flying. Let's just clear that for me. Yep, okay. So, I wanted to prevent that, even though I'd imagine most people wouldn't try and, you know, do the sprint jump combo. So, at the start, once everyone's spread around, I execute at every player who's in game mode 2, meaning that they are actually playing the game, a marker entity. In this case, I chose an area effect cloud. I've tagged it with start, and I said this should last for 3.5 real-life years. So it's not going to despawn until I tell it to. This just sets up some title stuff. This just says, please wait, we're loading the chunks. It'll begin the countdown by summoning a timer entity that we're trying to add a score to. It won't work until it finds that entity, so that's another way you can enable a countdown timer. Summon an entity that you're trying to add a score to, or have a clock that you activate. This will just start the check for whether or not the world border should be shrunk, and this will basically make it so that people who want to see the timer, I was the only one, can actually see a timer like over here. It'll show up here. It's not the scoreboard. The scoreboard looks ugly. So yeah, I chose not to use that because it's also hard to read sometimes, because seconds, minutes, and hours might get like switched around. It's not cool. Okay, so the countdown is pretty similar. The only test is it's testing for ticks instead of seconds. So this, you know, wait 60 ticks, then countdown, and then it'll count down, you know, as you'd expect. And this long chain right here is sort of the dividing line between the pre-game and starting the game. So this long chain basically starts the game. And before I move on, am I missing anything? All right, the sprint contingency. So the sprint jump is clearly something I wanted to talk about. I mentioned it earlier. So it's summoned. So earlier when I spread all the players around, I summoned a little marker entity, I guess, and that comes into play here. So while this is active, which is during the countdown, it will, or sorry, the second countdown, which is kind of confusing actually. I don't. Let me put myself into game mode 0. Let me see if I can show you exactly what happens when you start the game. So, actually, yeah, we'll do that. Oh, I forgot to reset this to not take 5 seconds to go. Yeah, there you go. Alright, and this will spread me around the map somewhere. You see it does the please wait loading chunks, and now you'll notice if I try and do the whole sprint jump thing, it won't let me. Oh yeah. Guys, I win. I'm so good. Anyways, sorry, I digress. So, during that, you'll notice that it said, please remain stationary until the game starts. So the way that happens is, if somebody is sprinting, and they sprint 1 centimeter, which is the stat I'm tracking with the sprint objective. So if they're sprinting, which is what this is, and they're also in game mode 2 because I don't want spectators to, you know, if there were any, to suddenly get teleported somewhere. So if that happens, it will TP at S as the person who ran the command. So I'm basically saying, run this command as everyone who said, or who is sprinting. So it'll TP them to the nearest start area effect or marker entity that marks where they started. It'll make sure that it's actually nearby so that they don't get randomly teleported to everyone in the world. Yeah, it'll just teleport them back to it. It'll tell them just, you know, stay still, and then it'll set their sprint score back to 0. So that's how that works. Yeah, and that gets disabled in this long chain that I won't go through in a lot of detail. You can here, let me give myself night vision. I'll if you're curious about any commands, you can leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I'll try and get back to you on it. I'll just go along here. So this just kills the timer so that it's no longer timing things. And most of these are pretty self-explanatory. This starts the actual game timer over there. I should have specified. This disables the sprint contingency, and the rest of this, well, this just kills the marker entities at the start. The reason I said may not happen is if you have a spectator. Or if you only have a spectator and nobody playing, which was a problem while I was testing it because I was in game mode 1. Anyways, I guess I'll move on. So this timing system, how do I get something like here's this on? All right, let me give myself the C timer tag. Whoops. Players tag added C timer. Okay, so now you'll see that I have a little timer on my right hand side, so it's hours, minutes, seconds. Yeah, so this is so that's linked to this timer right here. So I use the same trick I did for the game initialization countdown while people are in the lobby. So it'll add ticks to ticks in timer. Every time ticks reaches 20, it'll add a second, set ticks back to 0. Same trick for the seconds. I also have a separate one called episode minutes. Oops. That will, you know, that will track the number of minutes into the episode for episode markers later. You know, minutes to hours, all pretty simple stuff. Yeah, episode minutes is a separate thing I have. You know, announce markers, stuff like that, yada yada yada. So this just so the way I have the timer on the right is actually just a blank title and a lot of white space followed by the score and colons. So yeah, when the game starts, redstone block is set there so that people with the C timer tag will, you know, get to see the timer. Am I missing anything? Oh, and while I'm on the timer, I implement, so when a server lags, ticks may not happen every tick, which isn't super important for the countdown. You know, the countdown's okay for being an hour off, or not an hour off, excuse me, that would be bad. But, you know, if there's a margin of error of like even 5% or even like 50%, you know, if it's counting down 50% speed, it's like 5, 4, you know, it's regular. And you know, that countdown's not important. But when you're trying to track in-game time and the server starts lagging, the timer will slow down with the server. I can't really demonstrate that unless I actually, let's start the timer, shall we? Oh wait, I forgot, this enables the win check. Let's where's the thing that enables the win check? All right here. So let's just I don't know, let's make that always active, and let's, you know, deal with the fact that that happens. And now let's actually start the timer. As you'll see, it'll take a little bit of time and then activate this command block, which I have to reapply the tag because it gets removed for me when the game wins, so that this doesn't interfere with it saying Cactus Puppy wins, because obviously every tick it's drawing a new subtitle to my screen, so, and you don't want to override the win. So yeah, anyways, so let's talk about the timer. So let's say this was lagging behind, and the way I did this was I had a timer on my second monitor that was started as soon as the game started, except it didn't start because I forgot to test it, or I forgot to start it. So how do you get around that? I set up this chain of command blocks, so it goes along here, along here, along here, and I won't get into the specifics, but it uses a lot of the same ideas from here, or the previous counters, to make it so that if I do scoreboard, players, set, sync, time, sync, and then I can enter like hours, let's say it's an hour in on my actual timer, 33 minutes in and 45 seconds. See, as soon as I execute that, it will make it that time. And if I want to set it back, I can. If I want to set it to I can set it to anything. I can even say 0, 0, let's say it's 20 minutes in, or even like 19 minutes and 59 seconds. So it'll go to, you know, 20. And everything works with that. So again, I won't go into the specifics of how that works, but I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, so that's the syncing mechanism. The basics is it uses some math. Not math, but yeah, it'll take the time you enter, start using modulo operations to extract. It'll extract, let's say, the 59 first by modulo 100, then it'll integer divide, so it'll end up with this, then, you know, modulo divide again, get 19, modulo divide again, get 0. So that's, you know, seconds, minutes, hours. Set it to the appropriate things in here, and yeah, that's all done in the tick, so it works perfectly. World border test is pretty simple. Actually, I don't know if I can trigger this manually. We can, actually, by setting it to just before 2 hours. Let's do that really quick. Alright, so now you'll notice that the world border is shrinking. So the way that works, that's really loud. So it tests for 2 hours, and it waits 2 ticks so that it says warning world border shrinking after this says the episode mark. This will announce that the world border is shrinking. This will run the command that will start shrinking the border. This will start the display down here that tells you where the world border is at the moment. This will just play a sound that says, that was the loud sound you heard. And this will disable the world border check. Just so that you don't have it. Yeah, because I was lazy and I didn't want to go hours, minutes, seconds, ticks, right? Because otherwise it's gonna several other times match this description, and I didn't want it to run then. Particularly 2 hours, 0 minutes, 1 second, and 2 ticks. That's not good. So how did I get this to work down here, where it tells you just how far the world border is? So of course, me being me, I didn't just settle with saying, or okay, let's get this first. So world border get will get the size of the world border, the diameter of it, if you will, even though it's a square. I guess diameter still applies. So you notice it says that stuff, and if we break this redstone block, the display will stop. But what this does is it grabs this value from the command block every tick it's activated. Let's just put that back, I guess. This will divide the it'll take the result from this command block and store it on border player and data. Yeah, some pretty good stuff. Border player data, it'll divide it by 2 in order to get the radius, and it'll just display that to you over here. Now let's talk about the win condition. So I have a similar thing going on where this tests for the number of people, or this will test for all the people that are alive. So they have an alive score of, whoops, set display sidebar alive. So whenever somebody dies, I set their, so I have a scoreboard checking for when people die. This is their death count. If they die, their alive score will be reduced by 2, so it'll be -1, just because that's a design choice I made. It'll set their death back to 0. That's really loud. Yeah, so kind of similar stuff to the sprint statistic objective. Anyways, so this will test for all the players that are still alive. And the success count will be how many players are still alive using the stats command. It'll be stored on players alive in data. I should probably show you what data is. So yeah, there's border player 162. So for some reason, I don't know why, Minecraft does not let you just do something like divide by, and then you just put 2 here, because it'll be like, oh, I couldn't find player 2, like literally 2, like that. It'll try and find the player named 2. So I don't know why it does that. But yeah, you need to store that in a scoreboard person. Anyways, so it'll, you know, check how. So every time it runs this, it'll store the number of players that match this criteria right here in its success count, and it'll grab, this command block will grab the success count from that block, put it into players alive, in data every tick, and chain to this, if there's only one person alive, it'll set a redstone block, I believe. Or, oh, sorry, no, this won't do it, but if that criteria is met, this command block will be triggered off, and it will place a block up here, and this is basically all the win condition stuff. You know, this announces that the player's won and how much time has elapsed. This will disable the win condition check. Oh yeah, I'll just trigger it off, I guess. But yeah, this sets it to needs redstone, so it no longer fires. This will set that block here to air so that it can be triggered off again if you want. Or this is just cleanup, I guess. It'll disable the timer. It will remove the C timer tag, so the subtitle is no longer displayed. It'll you know, say the person alive wins, as you saw. Here, let's go to the other side where I can actually see all the command blocks. It'll make the winner invulnerable, and it'll trigger off the fireworks. The fireworks were done in a similar way to how I did the countdown clocks over there. I add ticks, you know, it goes around, says, good job, you did it, and it'll reset the timer. Pretty good stuff, and that's actually about it. Once I have the world download, I will post that in the description so that you can look at the specifics of the command blocks for yourself, and such. Oh, and finally, there's a thing to reset the timer. I won't go into it. You probably can guess how it works if you have, if you got the rest of this video. Let's just reset the command blocks for the fun of it. Yep, you'll see tree, the lobby is still here, and stuff. So yeah, that's about it. If you want to check out the commands for yourself, there'll be a download once I have the download, because this is not my server. And yeah, all you need to do is to see the command blocks is /tp010, and you can take a look around. That's about it. Thanks for watching.